Welcome, everybody. Nice to be with you today. Today we have really special guests joining us from Butterfly Air. Butterfly Air is a really an innovative, interesting solution for air quality management. I'm going to let Nick and Ali give you the rundown of how the name of Butterfly Air came to be, but not just the name, but also the design of the sensor itself. And so we're really excited to talk today about this solution as well as their solution certification that was recently achieved with us and bringing this very, very innovative way of looking at air quality to the market. So without further ado, I'd like to start with Ali. Ali is the lady on the call, so we'll say ladies first. But Ali, would you like to introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a bit about how you came into Butterfly Air as a story?
Good morning, and thank you for that introduction. So, I'm Ali Munro, co founder and creative director of Butterfly. And as the name suggests, we were inspired by the butterfly as a creature and its connection to nature, and the fact that it's a very sensitive indicator to the health of our environment. And I was on a trip to Zimbabwe where my sister lives and saw the most incredible flutter of butterflies in a remote part of Zimbabwe. And we were talking about seeing them and the fact that they were there because the air quality in that part of Zimbabwe was very clean and clear. So we just thought that was a really wonderful reference to have for an air quality monitor. It's something that people like to see in their garden and where they live. So it's got a very nice connotation and connection to air quality.
Really nice. And Nick, you are also a co-founder. Yeah, maybe introduce yourself and a little bit of your background of how this came to be.
Likewise. Morning, everybody. So happy to be on the call and thrilled to be working with SBC and yourself, Nick. So I'm co-founder alongside Ali. I happen to be CEO, and in another part of my working life, I'm visiting professor of design at Imperial College, and that's allowed me to contribute to the project by recruiting a team of really top flight engineers, scientists, innovators who have engineered, developed, delivered the technology solution that is at the core of Butterfly as a system. And throughout, whilst we've been pursuing new, innovative, groundbreaking developments, we've been keen to align with standards, including the WELL standard, for instance. But in this case, we're obviously very, very pleased to have aligned with SBC and to be part of the SBC family. So what we feel now is we're moving forward with a system that offers genuine newness, impactful outcomes, but that is validated, approved, and accredited by the leading agencies in the world. And therefore, we can offer confidence to clients who are adopting Butterfly. And what's equally important to report is that the adoption of the system by very high level blue chip companies is developing apace. So therefore, what we are seeing is a powerful commercial deployment and scaling of the proposition. And obviously that speaks to the appropriateness of the solution to the conditions that the world is trying to negotiate at this particular point, and the requirement to deliver not only improved health, but also sustainable outcomes that, for instance, in the case of Butterfly, allow us to assist clients to save up to 40% energy on running their buildings. So effectively, what we've got is a double bottom line, i.e. improved health, and at the same time, improved energy consumption and reduced costs.
I think it's such a powerful how that you just explained of, you know, the butterfly air solution has been around for a little while, and I'm going to talk to you, Ali, in a second again about the story of how it came to be. But you know, as far as a robust hardware, software, sensor, beautifully designed, used for measuring air quality, but also feeding back to the BMS system and the various systems to optimize the air quality in the spaces is absolutely fantastic. And we'll go more into this in detail in a moment, but they've also created a very circular approach to this. So it's a very sustainable way of building these sensors, also flipping them out and using them differently as time goes on. But before we dive into this deep what and how you guys are doing it, I think I'd like to stay on the why for a little bit longer. Of Ali, you know, so you were in Zimbabwe and you saw these butterflies and you saw this astute focus to air quality. You also come from a design background. How did this story come to be, and how long ago was it that butterfly air became a thing?
It was 2018. Really, that the idea was sown, and it was. I think we felt there was a sort of synergy about the moment in a slightly, I suppose, accidental sense, because we hadn't set out on a deliberate mission to design an air quality monitor at that point, but we were both doing a presentation at Arup Engineering in London, and I was talking about a hospital project that I'd been working on. So, as you say, my background's design, and I've been involved in healthcare and wellness projects, largely through colour and material. And I was doing a presentation to the architects at Arup, and Nick was also doing a presentation about his work, his role in product design. And we met an amazing lady there, Anne-Marie, who was involved in the presentation. And afterwards she said, we are really focusing on air quality and air quality in commercial buildings. And we feel there's a real need for a new type of device from a sort of technical point of view, but in terms of in every sense, really. And so she said, I know you're both designers, and we've just been really interested to hear what you're saying about your approach to design. Would you be interested in being involved in designing such a thing? And from my point of view, although my background isn't science and tech, I'm a real believer in the fact that when you come into a sector that you're not steeped in, you've got a very sort of fresh, hopefully, point of view on that, and you can be disruptive, and you can have ideas that present themselves in a different way to people that have got very different expertise, but they are, you know, they're coming from a viewpoint that is, I suppose, guided by the knowledge of that industry, whereas mine wasn't, if that makes sense. So in a way, you think I've got no limitation because I don't really know what the parameters are. And my experience with tech was very much that you quite often it's quite cold. You see a box on the wall and you don't really know what that box does. So for me, from the outset, it was really important that we could design something that was intuitive and therefore communicated a connection to the environment. And through doing that, we could improve awareness and education, as well as providing information about air quality in an environment. So that's how we set about, really from the start, developing our ideas. And obviously, as described before, the real key inspiration was the butterfly, and we thought it would be we could use it to design a very beautiful object that people would be very happy to have on the walls, whether it was a hospital or a school or an office. And you'd get a sense of what the air quality monitor, what that was, because of the design of it, rather than having something anonymous So that was very important. And Nick, obviously, he provided a different insight because he's a very experienced and skilled product designer. So I think the combination of the nature inspiration and the fact that I suppose my approach is very human centric. I've experienced how difficult it can be in a hospital for people that are working and also as a patient.
Yeah, and we don't know what we don't know, right? And I love that keynote that was once given by Steve Jobs of you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking back, right? And seeing how things came to be. And I think you guys solved challenges that you didn't even know you solved, right? So smart building certification was founded in research, and we were doing all kinds of really interesting research projects to, inform better buildings, better spaces, healthier environments. And one of the projects we did was in a school here in the Netherlands, and we hung up air quality sensors, and we were measuring the impact of the air quality on the students and on the classroom. And our ask to the teacher was that if they saw the air quality went out of proportion, that they would open a window and let that, the fresh air come in to get that CO2 level down and to get the cognitive performance up, because we know that at a heightened CO2 level, the cognitive performance of people is decreased. But what we didn't foresee was the ask of the teacher to actually go into a device, into a phone or into a computer, and see that there was a problem, and then to go and open a window. And the truth is that they should be teaching. They should be actually working with students, not monitoring air quality, right? And so the butterfly sensor is so profound in the sense that it gives you that visibility immediately on the wall, and you don't even need to go into another device to see what's going on. You can see that there is a challenge that needs to be dealt with there, and it's more of like a glance at the wall rather than a deep introspection into what's going on in the space. So I think you guys have solved some incredible challenges there that you didn't even know maybe existed. And I just want to say thank you for that, because I think teachers around the world and hospitals and places are going to be in great benefit from this kind of new way of thinking about air quality and making it transparent, right? Having a discussion with the people in the space about air quality is such an interesting aspect. And Nick, I want to go to you real quick. What is your experience with that so far? Is the built world open for such a transparent view on air quality, and what is your goal here?
Yeah, no, well, thanks for all those comments, Nick. So if we talk about the built environment right now, well, of course, on the one hand, people might take a view that it would be a concern if they were measuring and reporting problems that they didn't have a solution for. Equally, at the other end of the scale, there are buildings which are already well engineered and delivering high quality air and keen to encourage their occupants to reoccupy their desks, for instance. So if Butterfly can, on the one hand, be a tool to reassure people in an environment which actually is properly ventilated, properly purified and whatever, well, that's got to be a good thing. And the simplicity of the narrative on the glanceable level provides that reassurance. Equally, the granular nature of the data, which can be interrogated, let's say, by a professional, also provides reassurance and messaging that the property owner can provide to the tenants. And on the back of that, you get other benefits from a commercial point of view, including increased rental potential, increased asset value, not to mention what we just talked about briefly there with regard to cost saving through energy and so on and so on. But if you look at the other end of the scale, where we have a building that is starting to analyze its air quality, can identify it's got a problem. The question that we asked throughout the project ourselves, and we think is important when you have a research-based initiative, is so what? And the reason why so what is a powerful question to ask yourselves is it cuts across anything that could be considered self-regarding. Well, we built this clever thing and it does all this clever stuff and it reports this clever data. Okay, so what? But the so what thing is a powerful trigger then to do something about it. And if, for instance, in that built environment, you are getting data from a location where there are problems, once you know about those problems, you can start to find solutions. And we've been very, very active in that, linking to BMS, purification devices, and talking to building owners about the steps that they can take. And it's reasonable to begin with that those building owners don't necessarily want the information to be glanceable until they themselves understand what the problem might be. And we've been very keen to cooperate with those building owners and assist them to gather data, let's say discreetly, formulate a response, then start to implement a plan, and only then communicate to the community that there is a problem. We've identified the problem. We're now working on a solution, and we anticipate that solution to be live on date X, Y, or Z. That's a reasonable approach, and in itself provides reassurance because people like the fact, whether, for instance, it's in a hospital or a school or whatever, that somebody's addressing a matter which could be of great concern to the occupants, and they're doing something about it in a responsible, committed, and practical way. And the transparency of that is also reassuring to those individuals and delivers other levels of value in terms of the workforce commitment to turning up for work, for instance.
Yeah.
So all across the piece, you know, the outcomes can be very positive in the built environment, whether you have an already super healthy building or whether you have a building that might have some problems, but nevertheless you've got commitment to step towards dealing with those problems, and you want to communicate that that is your program to the individuals who are occupying the space.
100%. And I think, you know, what's so interesting about your frame or your answer for that is that, you know, all of these organizations using smart building, they're at different phases, they're at different situations, they have different processes and governance and cultures and ethos and all these different things, and their building is also at different levels. So there's definitely some flexibility here of how do you do it in a way that makes sense for that organization, right? And we've even had conversations about, you know, earning your wings, you know, where you build up towards the transparency, you build up to the openness of showing everybody what the quality of the air is. But it starts with getting some initial view, initial guidance, and understanding what the current situation is, and then going from there. So for all of you that know our framework, I'm just going to go through it real quick so that we can explain the SBC framework is made up of a number of modules, and we really look at functionality of a smart building and what that value of that functionality is, and we want to go through Butterfly Air against that framework to show you how their solution adds value in all of these different areas. So the first module is building usage. How does an organization have control over how their asset is being utilized? The second module is building performance, thinking about ESG, sustainability aspects, about your energy performance, about your water usage, these types of things. The third one, which is of course the bread and butter of Butterfly Air, is indoor environment, which is about health and wellness, about air quality, about sound, about light. What kind of functionality does a building have in place for those elements? Then we have a module on safety and security. which is both physical and digital. And of course, as we are implementing smart solutions, we need to be thinking about the data security of those solutions. Not all of them are created equal. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the last module is user behavior and collaboration. How can individuals interact with the building, but also interact with each other? And then all of these things are brought together with connectivity and infrastructure, because without that, the whole thing falls over, of course. And integrative design, saying how can we, with the least amount of technology, maximize the value in all of these different areas. Trying to make smart buildings less technology rather than more. So let's start with building usage. Ali, when you look at the Butterfly Air solution, how could an owner, a property manager, a facility manager use your solution to understand how the asset is being used, and how can they kind of gain from the insights that they get from your solution?
I think really until you've got something in a building that can give you information, it's very difficult, isn't it, to do something about it. So it's about that being informed and about transparency. So our monitors measure many different things that, of course, we now know are very important to your health. And I think what's difficult is the things that you can't see. So the devices have got sensors that measure things like particulate matter, CO2, TVOCs, which is volatile organic compounds. And I should have mentioned before, I know you alluded to this, Nicholas, but in the first instance, the devices are designed to give you a very immediate indication that air quality has declined through the colour of the wings. So you can see straight away if the air quality is good in your room because the wings or the device will glow blue. And that was inspired by the Morpho butterfly. And if air quality changes, then the butterfly wings change to green. And if the air quality declines further and it needs attention, the colour changes to amber. So you've got a very sort of quick and immediate way of seeing if things are not, if they're good or if they're not right. And then we've got a dashboard that will tell you exactly the levels of the things that the metrics that the devices are measuring. And I think you obviously, we are trying to provide as much information to clients about what that means, because I do understand that many people don't really know, and myself included before I was on this journey, what are safe levels. So we're very keen to simply, and I'd underline this because I think, there's a lot of information overload, be able to do an edit of what people really need to know when they're in a meeting room or they're in the classroom, so they can do something about it if those air quality levels have changed or dropped. And I think Nick he'll probably be able to tell you a bit more about how that technically happens. But that's the sort of, I think, without having some way of measuring in your space, you just don't know what's going on. And that's why the monitors are very important to have there. So you've got that information.
Wonderful. Yeah, and what we've seen in some cases is that air quality sensors are used to see that a room has been used, and they can trigger cleaning from that, or they can trigger, anything that needs to happen after a space has been used, because you can see that the trends of the air quality are in relation to how a space is being used. So in the next module, building performance, on one side it's about energy and these types of things, but I think, Nick, this is a nice moment to also talk about the the sustainability of how you guys are approaching this to begin with, right? So when we look at ESG reporting, sustainability reporting, it's not just about your energy consumption and these types of things. It's about how your suppliers interact with the globe, and it's how you as an organization are buying elements and things within your building that are circular or thought about in a sustainable way. So on Nick, let's start with what is the impact directly of the solution on the building performance? And then let's also talk a little bit about how are you all kind of contributing to sustainability practices in general?
Yeah, so if we focus on building performance for start off, you've got to begin with robust, accurate, verifiable data. So our initial focus is, can we gather all the information that's necessary to a level of accuracy which is unparalleled, reliable, and therefore trustworthy, upon which you can make decisions that will optimize the performance of the building. So our initial focus was that accuracy, was innovating a means by which we can deliver data to generate trust. And trust is at the heart of what Butterfly's all about. And the reason we say that is because when we did our review, full review of all the devices that are available commercially in the world, we were interested, let's say, in the variability of the performance of what we saw and how it was unreliable. And for a large part, one would struggle to trust the data in question. So we said, okay, our objective is to really sort that first and foremost, because once we've got that corner really established, we can then use the data that comes out of the system to affect, influence, determine the performance of the building. And we did that work. We patented our solution in multiple territories. And so therefore, we know we're starting from a solid platform of excellence and trustworthiness. That's then allowed us to talk with building owners, building managers on the basis of, well, let's start to optimize the way your building works. We've got data from your indoors and we've got data from your outdoors, so we can present to you a picture with regard to how the building breathes right now in real time, how it's been breathing for the last day, week, month, whatever. And so we can also deliver trend. And on that basis, we can optimize the way the ventilation, in terms of bringing external air into the building, balances with purification in terms of, well, how are we purifying the air that's already in the building, and how do we use that data to, for instance, minimize heating or cooling of that incoming air. So across the board, that all's been a really fascinating process. And what we're now saying is, well, where do we actually think that data, let's take a hospital, is most useful? Is it in an operating theatre? Is it in a waiting room? Is it in a ward? Is it in the staff canteen? Whatever. And just taking that hospital example as one example, you can then apply that thinking across whole estates to decide where would an intervention by Butterfly be most effective and impactful on this large office complex, for instance. And there's a lot of interesting outcomes that are coming from that. Speaking to the second point you raised there with regard to supply chain, well, Ali's taken charge of one aspect of Butterfly, which is its credentials in and of itself regarding its choice of materials, its own carbon footprint, and how we've been keen to be responsible not to injure the planet with our attempts to help the planet. And therefore, sourcing recycled materials, maximizing their use within our hardware has been critical. And we've achieved that. Second of all, optimizing our data analysis, deploying AI, for instance, in order to really make the data analysis as efficient as possible from an energy point of view, is something that we are working on. And always up, what you're therefore building is a culture which you can truthfully represent to your client as responsible, thoroughly thought through, and the best in class in comparison to any of the players that may be competing at this point. And we feel that therefore the impactful ability that Butterfly presents in terms of building management, allied to the responsible culture that we've developed with regard to the carbon footprint of our hardware and our software system, speaks to clients who are concerned about and seeking solutions for their own ESG targets. And that alignment then really facilitates adoption of Butterfly, alignment of our culture with a client's culture. And on that basis, what you're building is long-term sustainable relationships between the people around the table making the decisions.
That's phenomenal. And you've spoken to a number of different aspects there. From a building performance perspective, you guys have seen some really cool energy savings numbers. So you're really saving the planet in that way. And the work you guys are doing on your hardware itself in a circular way is definitely commendable. So the ROI from an energy perspective is always quite straightforward, right? You can see how much energy you save versus the investments you're making. The more challenging ROI is more on the health and human performance aspect of a building. And I loved what you said about where is the best place to be putting these things. Elizabeth, who runs our research at SBC, did a major research with waiting rooms for surgery, right? And that they saw that when you put biophilic design in those spaces, it calms the nerves, and they actually have seen incredible results in faster recovery times, but also people going through the surgery itself. You'd be surprised how many people decide not to go through the surgery in that waiting room when it's not performing the way it should. Those things are really, really quite interesting. And what we're working on now is how do we measure the ROI of human performance in office spaces or in all of these different environments that humans exist, and buildings are for humans. So the module building environment is all about health and wellness. And in Butterfly, we don't even need to speak about it too long because that's your bread and butter. But I'd like to ask you, Ali, what is your philosophy on indoor environment, so healthy environment when it comes to Butterfly? And what are you all seeing as some of the cases of achievement when it comes to Butterfly in that module?
I think, as you've touched on there, it's so important to have, when you're inside, and we're all inside so much. I know lots of people are aware of the fact we spend about 90% of our lives inside. And I think we became aware during COVID and lockdown how important the connection to nature is in terms of our sort of health and wellness. And actually, I just slightly diversifying, but there was a really interesting fact for me when I was working in the hospitals that patients that had a view, that had a window, were much more likely to recover more quickly than patients that were in a room with no windows and no light. so I think there's a lot of different references that are really important and make people, without them really realizing, feel a lot better. And I think that obviously air quality is one, and we know that it's very important. And as you mentioned, there's light, and the comfort and the detail, I think, that is in a building. Things often, I think, are overlooked. The materials that are used, colour for me is a very, very important thing. I think, in hospitals and spaces like that, they're often just all grey. And there's no, I think having something in a space that's very uplifting is really important. And I think that the butterfly, the symbol of the butterfly, going back to that, is a very important reference for me, because I think it means that people, hopefully that reassurance about the fact that a building is being transparent in terms of doing whatever it can to try and improve what's going on in the building through things that you can't see and things that you can see as well. But it's all related, and it's all about really creating an awareness that beyond just being in your own particular space, it's you're thinking about the bigger picture and what you can do personally, and as well as in a group, to change some of those things and make it better. And of course, you can't, going back, that's all about education. And I think we're very keen that our devices and our products would be something that would be very usable in an educational environment, like a school or a university. So I think starting at the sort of bottom, and really connecting with children, and you hope that then if you start there, it will filter out, and people will engage and they will want to do more about it. And I think occupants are now asking more searching questions about what's going on in a building, and quite right that they should. That's a really important part of change.
I love that. And I think what we're seeing is that we as a collective, not just the Smart Building Collective, but as a consciousness globally, we're getting smarter. We hope we're getting smarter in a lot of ways when it comes to what do people need, right? And so another big research that Elizabeth is working on now is all about neurodiversity and how every individual is so different from another, and what are the building blocks for each of these people. And I loved your comment on color as a perfect example. A lot of people don't understand the impact of color actually when it comes to what it does to our cognitive performance. And there's an interesting statistic as an example of people with red kitchens are like 33% more overweight than others, because red somehow makes you hungry and wants to eat more. Like these kinds of things we just don't even know, right? Like the research helps us kind of understand these things. Well, thank you both so much for these insights and sharing with us the incredible aspects of Butterfly Air. In the comments, you can see some more information about the solution certification that they just achieved, as well as all the insights around their solution. We look forward to following the Butterfly Air story. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to get in touch with Nick or Ali or myself, and we can connect you to the right people. Nick and Ali, thank you very much for your participation, and we look forward to speaking to you all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.